If this spring is an indicator to the summer, we may be in for something worse than the season of the simp. Coming to paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, 1987. Learn lessons about life and teenage love in the 1980s with this coming-of-age John Haynes story. Pre-order your copy of John Haynes, 1987 at online booksellers everywhere. There was chaos in Chicago as hundreds of teenagers converged in the downtown area to participate in wanton violence. All news footage in this video is used under fair use of United States copyright law of 1976 and is used in conjunction with my commentary.
Chaos on the streets of Chicago over the weekend with large groups gathering downtown. Joni has more now on how local leaders are responding.
Chicago police have been directed to strategize how they're going to deal with incidents like this as summer approaches. The rowdiness and violence that happened downtown over the weekend shocked people, and it's been seen all over the world on social media. Hundreds of teens and young adults were seen running in traffic on Michigan Avenue in the Loop, jumping on vehicles and smashing windows. Saturday night, 2 teens were shot. A 16-year-old in the arm, a 17-year-old in the leg, both taken to Northwestern Hospital. Police were trying to respond and escort people to safety, but drivers were trapped, and one woman told our Dane Placco that her husband was driving their car and he was beaten.
Their windows down, and the guys put in their face like...
you were hitting him in the face?
So my God is like that.
How's your husband? Is he okay?
I don't know.
I'm from Chicago, and I understand kids having a good time, but this is definitely bad parenting. We have to do better as parents. Our kids should not be out here. Where are their parents at? That's my question. Why aren't they asking where their kids are at right now? Are they tracking them? Do they see his behavior? This could easily lead to something very, very terrible.
There were numerous statements issued by elected leaders. Mayor Lori Lightfoot said that parents need to be responsible for their children. Mayor-elect Brandon Johnson said it is not productive to demonize the youth. Also on Friday, a 14-year-old was shot at 31st Street Beach. Joni Lum, Fox 32, Chicago.
Okay, Joni, thank you.
Now, according to reports, hundreds of teenagers converged in downtown Chicago where they jumped on cars and participated in all sorts of wanton violence, and as a result, 3 teenagers were allegedly shot and other individuals were attacked and beaten as a part of much of the mayhem that went on. Now, while Chicago officials want to try to classify this as an isolated incident, it fits a larger pattern and profile of extremely wild behavior that teenagers have been participating in all across the country that fits the pattern and profile for beta males and feminist indoctrinated women that I talk about in both of my books, The Man Crisis and The Woman Crisis. And what we see here is something that the late Dr. Charles Stanley talked about as related to America reaping what it sows, later than what it sows, greater than what it sows. And what we're reaping with these teenagers is a bitter harvest as resulted to the seeds of feminism that we planted way back in the 1960s. Now, over 60 years later, these seeds have grown up to become children of the corn, and these children of the corn are wreaking havoc all across not only Chicago, but other cities like, I believe there was a Pennsylvania or a Delaware Wawa, where we saw a group of hundreds of teenagers converge in a similar fashion, looting that store, and a 7-Eleven in the Los Angeles area, where hundreds of kids also participated in a similar kind of violence, where they looted that 7-Eleven as well. And as I connect the dots as related to this pattern of behavior, it all goes back to the 1960s and the feminist movement, where we changed the moral position of America's women And as we change the moral position of America's women, it has led to the complete decline of America, because if the woman is going in a negative direction, she will take the entire nation in that direction, because the woman is the first teacher. And what many of our young children have learned over the last 60 years is dysfunction. That is the reason why we see these children of the corn basically wilding out in places like Chicago and other parts of the country. We see these children of the corn wilding out because most of our women don't have a moral position. No, most of our women, because they've been indoctrinated into feminism, what they believe is that they are out here living their best life, and they could care less about taking care of their children or teaching their children moral values. No, because the white feminists told America's women that they could delegate raising their children to others like those in daycare, who clearly just do not care about children. That's just a place to warehouse them. What happens is our children don't get a foundation in values or character. And because they don't get a foundation in values or character from their first teacher, what they learn is dysfunction in places like daycare and public schools. And without that mother there to give that child guidance and lay a foundation where they can go out here and bear the fruit of being responsible young adults, what happens is you get children who grow up among weeds, thorns, and briars. And what happens is these weeds, thorns, and briars wrap around our children, choking out their potential and turning them into these children of the corn that we see going out here wreaking havoc all across the country. The reason why you are seeing all of these children of the corn is, again, due to the way we changed the way we raise children here in America. However, many don't want to talk about that because many people don't want to hold America's women accountable for the way we have raised our children. Now, these same feminist indoctrinated women and white feminists said that a woman did not need a man to go out here and raise children. And this is the direct result of what we get when a woman raises children without a man. Moreover, this is what happens when we see a child raised without the structure and foundation of God's natural order, because it is God's natural order that creates a structure for both the man and woman to be under, and it is under that structure where people have a sense of purpose and direction. And this is what these children do not have, and this is why you are seeing hundreds of these children converging in places like downtown Chicago, or places like a 7-Eleven in California, or a Wawa, looking to go out here and take whatever they want or do whatever they please, because they have not been given any sort of structure, any sort of order, or any sort of leadership. And that is because we have destroyed the institution that the Most High established to give men and women direction and purpose, and that institution is the American family. Because we destroyed our family unit, this is why we've got children of the corn. We have children of the corn wandering aimlessly about this country, and many people don't want to acknowledge this because there are a lot of rich people who are making a lot of money from this chaos, and they make their money by selling consumer products to the moms and the dads, keeping them busy. Meanwhile, their kids are indoctrinated into dysfunctional lifestyles and ideas from Madison Avenue and Hollywood. And as a result of these children not getting any sort of guidance from adults, they are now going to their peers. This is what a family member told me as she was working in a daycare. She said that the children are getting guidance from each other because they're not getting any sort of guidance from their parents. And this is what we have been doing for 3 generations. We saw this done with the first generation indoctrinated into feminism, the baby boomers, who basically abandoned their children. We saw mothers going to work. Then we saw the Gen Xers. Basically, they were raised as latchkey kids, and as the crack epidemic basically destroyed the structure of the family for many people all across the country, again, we had children growing up without any sort of parental figure at all. And as those Gen Xers grew up without any sort of parental figures, they learned to lean on their peers. And we're seeing it with the next generation, which was, I believe, Generation Z and the millennials, growing up again without any sort of parents. And again, each generation growing up like wild stalks without any sort of structure or order or anybody to teach them to value anything, and without anyone there to teach any sort of values. This is why we're seeing the chaos we're seeing right now in cities like Chicago, places like either, I think, Philadelphia or Delaware, where the Wawa was, or the West Coast 7-Eleven. The reason why you are seeing all of these incidents is because we have children of the corn all across the country. And we have children of the corn because we did not go out here looking to plant seeds to create and bear the fruit of responsible adults in our society. No, we were not interested in going out here and bearing good fruit because most of America basically was caught up in its own greed because it did not want to invest in its own next generation. No, we had a lot of corporate bosses and politicians who wanted to go out here and capitalize on the greed and go out here and make big money on the whole thing of breaking up the American family, because according to people like your Rockefeller, he thought, 2 parents working on the job was better than a mom staying at home and teaching values to her children. So they signed off on the feminist movement in the 1960s, and ever since then we have gone from bearing the good fruit of functional adults to creating children of the corn. And this is what we are seeing in places like downtown Chicago for the, I believe, 3rd time, because this is the 3rd time we have seen hundreds of children converge in downtown Chicago, yet we have many of these politicians making the same excuses, sitting there talking about, this is because of the economy or other things or lack of summer jobs. No, this isn't about jobs. This is about a family unit that has been destroyed, and a family unit that has been destroyed because we did not go out here and instill a moral position in our baby boomer generation of women. And as those women ran wild, this is what we're seeing reflected in their grandsons and great-grandsons, because the children are a reflection of their parents. And what we see with these children of the corn is basically these children mirroring the behavior of not only their mothers, but their grandmothers and great-grandmothers. Again, children of the corn, because they were raised with no sense of structure, no sense of order, no semblance of anybody looking to lead and guide them, nobody teaching them any sort of values. And this is why they do not value anybody. This is why they don't value anybody's property. This is why they don't value anything at all, because nobody valued their mothers or their grandmothers, and their mothers and grandmothers and great-grandmothers never taught values to them, because most of them were taught to value living their best lives. They were taught to value having their own way, and this is what we see mirrored in their children, who have grown up to become children of the corn. And this is how America as a nation is reaping what it sowed, later than what it sowed, greater than what it sowed, like the late Dr. Charles Stanley talked about in many of his sermons. Dr. Stanley talked about people reaping what they sowed, greater than what they sowed, later than what they sowed. And this is the bitter harvest that America is reaping in cities like downtown Chicago and other parts of the country. We are reaping what we sowed because we did not invest in teaching values to our children. No, our women valued $1 more than our children, and because they valued $1 more than their children became children of the corn, and these children of the corn wander aimlessly across this nation, looking to destroy everything around them, because they were never taught that they were valuable. They were never taught that their family was valuable. They were never taught any sort of discipline or structure by their parents, and they were never taught to respect anyone else, because their mother never respected anyone else. It was all about her getting hers, and as she got hers, her children were left to be by themselves, and those children never learned to respect anything that she got, because she was out all for herself. And again, this is reflected, again, children of the corn reflecting their parents, and again, reflecting their parents because their parents never were taught any sort of values or discipline, and it wasn't passed down from generation to generation. And we'll have politicians like this new mayor of Chicago talking about, don't demonize the children. No, the children were demons due to the way that they were raised with no sort of family unit. And again, they are demons because they were born in sin, the sins of their grandmothers and great-grandmothers back in the 60s. What we're seeing again is these children, again, going out here and being the thorns and briars that are choking the life out of the nation, because as these children of the corn participate in their violence, what is happening is what I saw happen in the late 70s and 80s when I was a kid. Businesses deciding that they are going to close their doors and move away from cities like Chicago because they believe that that city is unsafe. And it's not only Chicago, it's cities all across the country. And again, it's very ironic because many of these business owners wanted to break up the American family so that they could make more money. But almost 60 years later, their children of the corn are creating conditions that are making it unsafe for them to do business, again, proving the point about reaping what you sow. Many of these corporate elite thought, oh, I'm going to break up the family. I'm going to make it where the woman is out here being the sole breadwinner and the one providing for the family. We don't need that man to provide structure and order under God. No, we don't need that man to do anything. And now these elite men are stuck at a point where they can't do business because the children that they wanted to try to make into consumers for their businesses no longer respect any property, no longer respect anybody's right to live, no longer respect any sort of order. And now that they're creating chaos, these same business owners are now reaping a bitter harvest because of the seeds they put in the ground over 60 years ago. But we'll have people sitting there saying, oh, that don't demonize the children, like the new mayor of Chicago. He's sitting there saying, don't demonize the children. No, you created demons when you destroyed the American family. And when you destroyed the American family and created these children of the corn, what you did was create a bitter harvest that you're reaping right now. But instead of being repentant and going to the Most High and asking for His help and investing in rebuilding America's men, what they want to do is talk in circles as more and more of these violent incidents go on, as more and more of these violent incidents go on, showing us a complete deterioration of society. We have many of these politicians just sitting there completely just blank and just not and overwhelmed and not knowing what to do. They're sitting there wondering, how do we get this back in order? Well, the whole thing is, if you don't invest in your men, first of all, because your men lay the foundation for your society, you're not going to get anything in order, because if those men are not invested in the society or see a value to anything, then there is no foundation for the women seeing a value in the men, and they cannot teach values of what the men have to their children. Again, you have many on the left not connecting the dots as related to how family works. Again, if the man is invested in like the way the Most High invests in the man, making him a steward, making him accountable, the woman who is the helpmeet wants to help the man maintain what he has, maintain what he owns, and she teaches the children to value what the man has. And this is how you create the foundation for your civilization. And this is how you teach people to respect other people and other people's property. Again, this is how you teach this, and you reinforce it with discipline from the mother and the father. Again, that when you have a family unit, the family teaches value to their children. And this is why you have people respecting other people's rights and property, because they're taught to respect other people. Again, goes back to what it says in the Bible about loving your neighbor as you love yourself and loving the Lord with all your heart, soul, and strength. Again, this is why the Bible is the foundation of civilization. But you'll have these leftists who sit there and say, oh, we don't want to teach that. No, and the wealthy who want to say, we want to go out here and go our own way. Well, this is what happens when you go your own way. You get children of the corn, and the children of the corn are the bitter harvest that you reap for not investing in your family unit and thinking you can do better and you can do things cheaper without a man, without a father, without a head. This is what happens when you think you can go out here and do things without the Most High and His order. You get the chaos you see in places like Chicago, and I believe it was Philadelphia, Wawa, and that other 7-Eleven in California. You get this kind of havoc because if you don't teach your children to value what you have, they don't value anything at all, and they go out here and participate in wanton violence because they don't see anybody investing in them. And that's why you see people looking to destroy everything around them, because no one is investing in these children. No one invested in them at all. And again, because their parents do not set a direction or have a direction set, what happens is they wander aimlessly, going out on the weekend, just going out here, stepping on cars, jumping on cars. And again, this is a pattern of behavior that happened in multiple incidents. I mean, it happened in Chicago multiple times. But we have many of these politicians sitting there wondering, well, what are we going to do about this? It's like, no, we need leadership. We need direction. But it's hard to see leadership and direction when we've had 60 years of feminism, which has bred beta males and feminist indoctrinated women. And right now, it's like the blind leading the blind, and they're all falling on their way to driving America straight into a ditch, because we had a group of greedy people at the top who wanted to go out here and make all of this money in the short term, not understanding that the morals of the society is how you build long-term wealth. It goes back to the old African proverb the late David Carroll used to talk about in many of his classic masterpieces. He used to go and talk about this old African proverb: a race can rise no higher than the moral position of its women. and as the woman goes, so goes the race. Now, I paraphrased that whole African proverb to say, a nation can rise no higher than the moral position of its women, and as the nation goes, so goes the nation. That's what happens here with America. The moral position of our women is at rock bottom, and as the women are going and taking our society into perversion and deviancy and debauchery, the direction of the nation is just heading into an abyss. And what we are seeing is, again, the behavior of our women reflected in our children, who never got any sort of order and structure from their fathers, or any sort of life lessons in morality from their mothers. And again, because there was nobody there to teach, discipline, and reinforce it with things like spankings and punishments, what happens is these children have no sense of accountability, just like their moms. I mean, their mom has no sense of accountability, so the kids have no sense of accountability. And that's why we've got kids participating in wanton violence. And if this is what's happening in the spring, then I think we're going to have a thing worse than the summer of the savage. I mean, when I did that classic video series talking about the summer of the savage and the season of the simp, we're going to possibly get something even worse than the season of the simp, which is what we have been in for the last, I say, good 4 or 5 years. I mean, we may be getting into another wave of horror. And again, we've got politicians twiddling their thumbs, talking about summer jobs and all sorts, and getting more police. Well, police cannot really enforce a law because they had no control as related to hundreds of kids. But what they don't understand is we've got more than hundreds of kids wreaking havoc. We've got hundreds of millions of children all across this country. And again, just like I talk about in the man crisis about there being 100 million beta males, we've got about 100 million children. And again, these children of the corn growing up like stalks, growing up without discipline, growing up without order, growing up without leadership. This is the chaos that is coming in the summer. And if they couldn't handle that in Chicago with these people trying to talk about being soft, I mean, if you're soft like this, you're going to get squashed by these children of the corn, because these children of the corn need hard authority and hard order in order to get them in line. They need to know where the boundaries are. And when you have beta males and feminist indoctrinated women, they refuse to set boundaries. The beta male refuses to set boundaries because he's afraid of conflict. The feminist indoctrinated woman doesn't want to set boundaries because she doesn't want to be held accountable for the children that are a reflection of her, because in her eyes, everything is perfectly fine. So many people don't want to connect the dots as related to why we're seeing this violence, but we're seeing this violence because it is a way of us, again, 60 years of raising children. We have gone out here and we have reaped more than we sow, later than we sow, greater than we sow. And if this is the start of the spring, then we are in for a worse season than the season of the simp. Now, if you want to learn more about why these children of the corn are wreaking havoc all across this country, you can pick up my books, The Man Crisis and The Woman Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis and The Woman Crisis at other online booksellers like Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. And if you want to see me make more videos about the season of the simp and the children of the corn that are possibly going to be coming this summer, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, and the Cash App, and that'll enable me to make more content going more in depth like this. And if you want to pick up any of my other positive black fiction like John Haynes' 1987, the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, and the John Haynes series, you can find all those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them at other online booksellers like Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. No. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, Godbreaker. The man who rules the world takes on the Asgardian god of thunder in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes, Godbreaker in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback. From the author of the critically acclaimed book The Man Crisis comes The Woman Crisis. Learn why so many women have become lost in their quest to have it all in The Woman Crisis. Get your copy of The Woman Crisis in paperback at Amazon.com and online booksellers today.